Hello and welcome to the next episode of Let's Talk Community Sport Hubs. I'm delighted to have Jayne Smith along as well as James Beattie, and today we're going to have a bit of a chat and share some learning and experience with each other. So James, welcome and really good to see you. Do you want to give us a wee bit about your background? Because I know over the years you've had a few different roles, and it'd be really good to hear from you about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks very much for having me. I've worked in community sport hubs for a few years now. I started off in Aberdeenshire, so a bit more of a rural setting. But currently my role is the community sport hub officer for North Lanarkshire Council. So a bit more central and a bit more of a bustle. But nonetheless, still the same challenges, working with different clubs, community organisations and groups. And yeah, just here to share some of the learning that I've had along the way, I suppose, around collaboration.
Great. And what would you think? Is there been any huge differences between moving from like a rural area to more of a urban area? Because this actually ties in with our last episode where we did talk about some of the opportunities and challenges between both areas.
Yeah, completely. They're totally different, and I think I wouldn't have swapped it round, if I had the decision to do that, because I was a new officer coming into Aberdeenshire, and the community sport hub officer role, which is quite autonomous. It is a very unique role in the sense that you're developing hubs completely differently across the whole country, and the only thing you have is this 5 guiding principles to help you along the way. So, sometimes you feel quite alone. You're one officer out of 60 in the whole of Scotland or thereabout. And if you've got a geographical area such as Aberdeenshire, which is quite substantial, as you know, Highland is very similar, and that's split in two. So it's sometimes you do feel a little bit isolated. But the beauty of that is it comes with, the support of the officers around you. So I think that's where the value in collaboration came from, is because I'm linked with the officer from Murray, the officer from Aberdeen City, yourself, and the officer in Angus. So the beauty of that was I had the opportunity to gain the knowledge and experience from different areas, some that are geographically identical and others that were completely different, like the city, and linked it in with some partnership working as well. So the best example I suppose I have up there was the Northern Hub Forum. So it doesn't have to necessarily be just a chat, so I think the peer-to-peer learning is very important. If you feel like you're in that rural setting and you want to get together, make it around something, make it around a concept. And our concept was the Northern Hub Forum, trying to get the hubs from Murray, Aberdeen City, Aberdeenshire, and indeed the Highlands, certainly South Highland, to come together and have that conference. And through that planning process, we were able to have those conversations. So how that compares to down here is that in the central area, I think they don't know what they've got. And 10 minutes drive and I've got 4 officers I can speak to. So that's the real difference. And as a result of that, I think there's an element lost in terms of reaching out and having those conversations. So I suppose my pitch here today is just to encourage people to kind of do that and show some of the examples of where that's worked for me.
Okay, that's great. And really interesting to hear your journey, as it were. And I know we managed to get out on bikes together, so I know you're a pretty handy mountain biker. Is that your main sport, or do you do a number of different sports?
Yeah, mountain biking is my main sport. I did do badminton when I was in college and uni, and then I caught the bug for something a little bit more crazy. I actually used to do a lot of running too, but then my knees just couldn't take it anymore, and cycling was a little bit more.
Getting old.
It's
much kinder on the knees.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, much kinder on the knees. Not so much when you crash, but it's all part of the fun. I'll have the midlife crisis soon, so buying a bike the same cost of a car. That's kind of where we're at. But yeah, that's another great example, Donald. So at the start of 2020, I really wanted to try and actually network more. I'd done a lot of CPD courses the year before, which were really valuable, but I actually wanted to take this year to kind of focus on actually speaking to people. So that tied in really nicely with yourself, So we obviously, there's a few of us that like mountain biking, and yeah, we were all in that sport and professional context, but it wasn't. That wasn't really what it was about. It was just about going out on a bike and having a blether. And so that mountain bike collab, if you like, prior to lockdown was really valuable. And I think back to that as somewhere that I'd like to get to again when things open up, hopefully soon. But yeah, sometimes you forget to practice what you preach. And I think it's important to actually go out and make an effort to do that.
Oh, that's a really good point. You're absolutely right, isn't it? You're sometimes so busy kind of working in it that you don't practice what you preach.
Yeah.
James, have you got any examples you could maybe chat us through? Maybe you've talked a lot about collaboration and how important that is, that throughout lockdown that you could maybe share with us. Yeah,
certainly. So obviously, as I mentioned, I was looking to network more. I didn't foresee this. I don't think anybody did. So that networking changed from going out on a mountain bike and meeting a few officers to networking more virtually. So I've been thankful to link in with local officers, but also the hot topic calls were really important. So those learning experiences through actually having the conversation based around, and facilitated through Simon as well, and that network was really valuable because you could have those conversations quite informally, but they were facilitated and really professionally delivered. So it made it quite seamless. Through that, funnily enough, I've got a great example of collaboration through that. So one of the calls, there was a Q&A at the end of each call, and the Community Sport Hub officer from Argyll and Butte had a question, or rather, it was more of a challenge, and a statement. I think she expected an answer from it, but there were numerous groups around Oban that were looking for support RE equipment from an outdoor centre that was up there, and accessing various different bits and bobs that they required to kind of move. That potentially were surplus to requirement or no longer needed as a result of what was happening with his outdoor centre. So it was just quite by pure chance that I was on that call, and so was she, because I knew that our wider team were dealing with a lot of that. So I managed to help source equipment from the facility, and the officer up there managed to link in loads of clubs, groups and organisations where that equipment was in demand and could be utilised for community good, all of that elements, so it wasn't going to surplus to requirement perhaps, or even go into businesses. It was actually going to somebody local who could put it into practice. So that was brilliant, and it was completely out of the blue. It was a discussion in the hot topic calls and the Q&A, like I mentioned. I didn't expect it to go as far as it did. I went up there a couple of times to coordinate it, and the officer up there was brilliant, tied everything together. And I know for a fact that the relationships that she's gained through that, or at least that she had through that, will have that's a quick win. And you don't get many quick wins in the community sport hub sort of area. You don't. They take a long time. They're slow burners, but when they come, they're brilliant. So quick wins are fantastic for relationship building. It means that in the future, hopefully they'll be able to link better with her and see the value in community sport hubs and active schools. So yeah, that was a brilliant example.
I think that's really good. And am I right in thinking, was it Stacey maybe that you collaborated with?
Yeah, that's right. I wasn't sure where we were at, but yeah, that's right. So Stacey was just fantastic. She was brilliant at tying everything together and bringing the clubs in, and the groups that really mattered and that could actually action it really quickly, because we didn't have time. We didn't have all the time in the world. It was like a 2-week turnaround. And we were actually going up that week to try and sort some stuff out. So she was on that from the start and got everybody in the right place, the right time, and all the letters in that needed to be in to show that there was accountability for where that equipment had gone. So it was really good, really, really seamless. And I'm hopeful that it is quite a unique area, Argyll and Bute. I don't envy Stacey's role whatsoever in terms of that, because the geographical nature of it is difficult. 100% can't imagine what it's like. But those kind of situations, I think, will pay off in the future, and it is about trying to get those quick wins to build the foundations for those relationships in the future, so that hubs become stronger. So yeah, it was good that we managed to do that.
Yeah, and it's great that to hear about you guys linking up, because Stacey's maybe one of the newer hub officers, and you've obviously been at post for a number of years, and just to hear that support and that informal support that's out there, it's something that I've tapped into when I first started. And myself and Jayne are now part of a sort of mentor program where we're working with some of the new hub officers. So
yeah,
I suppose a bit of a call to action, if there's anyone that wants a wee bit of support, feel free to pick up the phone to your neighbouring hub officer or anyone else. And it just goes to show with James's example there, look at the results that can come from that. And I'm sure, James, now you've got a much stronger relationship with Stacey for anything else moving forward.
Completely. Yeah. We touch base quite a lot. Although it's completely different, I think it is really valuable to have that link. And the beauty of it is that some of the situations that she goes through, I will never encounter down here. So it's unbiased. Those conversations are unbiased, and you're drawing upon experiences that Stacey will gain from such a wide, varied communities, and potentially some insular communities that I can relate to down in the Central Belt, but they're completely different. And so I think that's where it helps, because although Stacey might be new to the network or newer to the network than I, she'll have fresh ideas that I've never thought of, and vice versa.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it, that we've been in such a challenging time and we've been kind of locked down, but actually through modern technology and kind of communicating in this way, the hot topic calls, etc., we've been able to establish new partnerships and kind of new relationships with the wider network.
Yeah, completely.
It's hugely beneficial, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if this had happened, 50 years ago, it might have not been as, I think it's hard now, but I do thank technology for the opportunity to still link quite easily with the clubs and the groups and the officers. It would be a different world, I think, if we looked back. So yeah, kind of have to be thankful. I don't know. You can maybe scrap that bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's always something positive can come out of a really pretty tough situation. I certainly feel, we've had this chat before, haven't we, Donald, that I feel more in touch with the wider network than ever before, because you didn't really have the opportunity to do this, or you didn't. You were just busy kind of in your local area, and there's so much to learn. And from what you've described, there's loads of learnings, and in that sharing and working collaboratively.
Yeah, oh, completely.
And am I right in thinking, James, there was another example of you collaborating perhaps in Lanarkshire with the team around there in a bit of a hub forum, so a bit like what we had up here in the north. But was it during lockdown or the last 6 months or something?
Yeah, so this was basically this was Pan Lanarkshire Community Sport Hub Club Network Forum that we had, and honestly, it was the brainchild of Gavin from South Lanarkshire. So he's the Community Sport Hub officer there, and we'd been discussing a couple of different things, ideas together, and through our discussions, what we found was that the clubs across Lanarkshire, which historically was actually one local authority, but is now split, those clubs had similar issues. They were asking similar questions, and this was right at the heart of sort of lockdown guidelines changing. So they were looking at guidelines, they were looking at facilities, they were looking at support. What are the answers to all of these three things? So Gavin, highlighted, well, why don't we join this together and come up with something that can actually answer some of these questions and is relevant for as long as it is relevant. So we did 2 sessions with that, which was great, and basically the real value for me here was that we got all the clubs that were wanting to come along. So I can't remember off the top of my head how many there were. Maybe around 20 clubs, something like that. I don't know if that's been overly generous, but I think it was around that mark. But it was a good manageable group as a result. You had a good split, and the value came from the peer-to-peer learning, not only from us as officers, but also from them. And it was actually quite interesting because they heard from a completely different officer from a different area saying the exact same thing. So I think the value to that was that it's not just North Lanarkshire Council telling us how it is. It's actually it's a national issue that we're having, where facilities are limited and you can't get access, or guidance is sometimes a little bit confusing, but we can break it down together, kind of thing. So that was the value. And then there was the peer-to-peer learning there as well from the clubs, where answers came from each other. There was a I think it was a table tennis club, a gymnastics club from south, the table tennis club in the north, who needed a facility. And gymnastics were like, well, we've got a little bit of space in our facility, that you can fit maybe 1 or 2 tables in, if that would be of value. And it was, that table tennis club then utilised that. So so we did 2 of those. We did 2 of those to the point where we thought, are we happy in terms of where we are just now? And then we splintered off and we actioned with the clubs that we highlighted needed additional support, and we encouraged those clubs to action with themselves, but shared the entire network with each other as well. So that might come back, but it's based on direct need, and that wouldn't have happened again if I hadn't just been having a chat with my neighbouring colleague. So that was hugely valuable.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. And do you think going forward, that's something you'll maybe continue?
100%. Yeah, I think especially at key points. It's similar to the hub forum up north that we started. We were going to do that biannually, if I remember correctly. And I don't think you need any more than that, because it was a lot of coordination to try and get it to that stage. But if hubs are only meeting quarterly or bi-monthly, that's a commitment. It's a huge commitment on top of that. So that's the same for this. People have commitments right now personally at home, and clubs are, sport is sometimes at the back of that, but they still want to play and engage. And so when that need arises, particularly around introduction to tier systems, for example, or if there's another lockdown, where do we sit in terms of being able to deliver those kind of things, I think we'll call upon that forum to be reignited across that area. And I would encourage, like you say, you sent out a call to action to the new officers to get in touch. I would encourage all officers to try and link with their neighbouring officer, or where there's a natural divide, I suppose, in terms of your local authority layouts, to try and connect that, because local authorities are just written on a map. That's irrelevant to the clubs that are existing there. So we've got a lot that are on the border of north and south, and that's just how it is. So they cross over, and they don't see the line. So just get in touch and see if you can bridge a few gaps together, because again, you'll get a couple of quick wins out of that, I would think.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant, James. I think that's a perfect summary and roundup for us to finish on. Just reach out and talk to the people working in your neighbouring local authorities. Yeah, so thank you so much for your time. Really, really interesting, and hope everybody out there has enjoyed listening to some of the examples that James has given us. If there's anything that you guys out there would like to discuss or talk about, please do get in touch with Sport Scotland, and we can get that organised, and we look forward to catching up with you next time. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.